bring in Cris Collinsworth, Football Night in America, Sunday Night Football. Are you following all of this stuff, Cris, with Caleb Williams? What's going on, what he wants, and what's true and what's not true? We got to unmute you, Cris. Is that us, that Marvin? Oh. All right. We'll figure this out with...
your setup was gorgeous.
It was. I thought so.
Flowing nicely.
Thank you. I've been doing this a long time. Yeah, Paulie.
Going back to the Caleb Williams story, the other sports outlets this week, and I use media outlets, air quoting, they're not putting it in the same perspective Mike Florio did, that his dad inquired with agents that, is this even possible? You see articles out there, Caleb Williams wants a piece of ownership if he's going to the NFL.
Let's try this again with Cris Collinsworth. Cris, what do you make of all this Caleb Williams talk?
Well, for being on your show, I'd like to have a piece of your show.
Okay.
And, I think that would...
I think we can arrange that. You know, the piece I'm going to give you is Fritzy. You can have Fritzy.
Yeah. Fritzy, all right. I'll take Fritzy.
Full ownership there.
Yeah,
full
ownership. Send him over. Yep. Send him over. We'll go to work with him.
So what do you make of the Caleb Williams story?
Why not? Right? I mean, you can take a shot at anything you want. And more we're seeing family members involved with negotiations, at least as it comes to agents. And if I heard the story correctly, it was the dad trying to tell agents that they would like to have a piece of a team. So it didn't make its way all the way to Caleb's agent, as I heard it, asking for it. It was the dad talking to the agents about it. And I've been in a few negotiations myself over the years. You ask for a lot of things. It doesn't mean you're going to end up with it. So, this kid's obviously a special player. He's going to have options that nobody has ever had before coming out of college, including staying at USC or going to any other school that he would like to go to because of the nature of college football right now. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think in many ways he is going to be the next or the first real test case of how far can a great player, in particular a great quarterback, push the limits of the NFL. Because remember, you've got the rookie wage scale, you've got a lot of things to where if somebody at USC comes up with some monster number, like, why would he not stay? And I've always thought the one possible competitor to the NFL would be college football, because you've got that core base of fans built into it. I think as the SEC and the Big Ten sort of take over the universe, we're going to see almost an AFC and NFC kind of rivalry. And we know historically how that had gone. But is there a case? I can make a case that Caleb Williams' value to USC is really a lot bigger than what he's getting paid. Because I was on the radio show one time and I said something about, I'll bet you the amount of money the University of Kentucky gets when they win a national championship, not to the college, not to the sports fund, but to the general university fund, is probably double when they win the national championship in basketball. For 3 hours on the radio, on WLW radio in Cincinnati, I was told what a complete idiot that I was, how stupid I was. I was so beat down, Dan. I really did. I believed them. And it turned out they were right. It wasn't twice as much. It was 5 times as much. And so now if you take that, and Caleb Williams is stirring the pot and they're getting all these rich alum from USC coming in the pot, are they making an extra $100 million? Well, if they are, can we give him 20 million of it? Well, if we do, does that keep him in college? You know, there's situations here that we haven't even discussed yet that are going to be fun to watch.
We're talking to Cris Collinsworth, a full introduction, the former Bengals wide receiver, majority owner of Pro Football Focus, and he'll be on the call with Mike Tirico. That'll be Sunday night, Dolphins, Eagles, 8:20 Eastern on NBC and Peacock. I'll give you Tua or I'll give you Jalen Hurts. You got to pick between the two.
Wow, which offense do I get to run?
You're starting your team. There's no offense yet.
Yeah. I think I might take Mike McDaniel. I mean, so here's one of the things a defensive coordinator in the league said to me about Tua. Said that he thinks he's the next Drew Brees because his ability to read things so quickly, and they're playing in that West Coast offense. And he's always been a footwork guy. The thing I loved about him coming out of Alabama, and everybody always wants to talk about arm strength, and it's so overdone. I mean, you have to have a certain level of arm strength in order to play in this league. He has that. But then it's the ability to process quickly, like Brock Purdy's doing in San Francisco in the same offense, process quickly and throw the ball to windows. You're not throwing it to a guy. He is not out there throwing it to Jalen Waddle. He is throwing it to a 5x5 window on that deep in cut and basing it on the footwork that he has. And Tua is one of the best I've seen coming out. And the comparison to Drew was a pretty good one. A guy who nobody talked about his arm strength, right? But his ability to process, get the ball out of his hand, throw it in the right window, anticipate throws, all those kinds of things. So I do think that Tua, while maybe if he were in Buffalo, would not be what Josh Allen is, because you've got to have the huge arm and a big hand and bad weather and all those kinds of things. But playing in Miami, playing in great weather, and playing in this style of offense, I'll take Drew Brees all day in that style. And I think that's the fit. And in Philadelphia, you've got a team that's built around their offensive line and their ability to run the football. And we're going to see, because Miami struggled a little bit against Carolina trying to run the football there or stop the run there. So this style of offense, this run first approach in Philadelphia, that as soon as you start playing the run, they've got Devontae Smith on the outside and A.J. Brown. Now you got those guys one-on-one. That's a headache. That's a problem out there. So the quarterbacks are where they should be. I don't know you flip-flop these two quarterbacks, and it makes much sense.
If Brock Purdy is an MVP candidate, why is Jared Goff not one?
It's a great question. I think that we saw them beat Kansas City on opening night. And there's something about this team, and it goes back to a season ago. I mean, they won, 8 out of their last 10, something like that, and then jump out to the start that they are here. So this is a team now that is playing. I think the hard part for most people to wrap their head around is that if he were really that good of a player, why isn't he still in LA, right? And I mean, it's not like Sean doesn't know what he's doing out there. So, that's probably the answer, but we're a long way to go. I mean, these seasons are so long. I feel like I've been calling a game every week now for the last 6 years, and we're not even to the halfway point here. So, everybody always says, well, who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl and who's going to do that? I'm like, tell me who's playing in January, right? Tell me what the lineup looks like in January, and I'll tell you which team it is that I like, because it's such a war of attrition. You never know who's still going to be standing at the end of the season. We saw just taking out Lane Johnson for Philadelphia had a major impact on that game the other day, the right tackle. So, a lot of these guys are people that and that well, but so many times it's the offensive and defensive line, which Philadelphia, every year they're drafting an offensive or a defensive lineman, right? They're going to try and win in the trenches down there. And they got away with a second-round pick at quarterback who ends up being, playing one of the great games we've seen in Super Bowl history, except for one play.
Speaking of the trenches, it feels like competition committee looking at that brotherly shove, the tush push. Man, it feels like it's too predictable, almost like extra points, and that they may want to take it away. What do you think the future is of that play?
I love that play. Okay. I hope they never take that play away. The reason I love the play as a former offensive guy, there's nothing better than walking up to the line of scrimmage and basically telling the defense, we are running right there, and you can't stop it. Boomer Esiason, one time, we're playing the Buffalo Bills. I think it was in the AFC Championship game. And he goes up to the line of scrimmage and he starts pointing at Bruce Smith over Anthony Munoz. And he goes, hey, Bruce, We're running right there. Anthony Munoz is the greatest player in the world. We're running right there, and we're scoring a touchdown. And Anthony, you can see him on the film. He's like waving. He's like, shut up. Like, what are you doing? And he comes over to me on the sideline, and he goes, Chris, you got to get Boomer to shut up. He's just pissing off, Bruce over there. I'm like, I don't care. I'm just trying to talk him into throwing me the ball. I don't care what he does with Bruce Smith over there. Are you crazy?
What's the fan base that gets the most upset at you?
Cincinnati.
You picked them to win the Super Bowl this year.
I know. As soon as I did, they started losing games. It's unbelievable. But yeah, I mean, I had one lady one time. So I was in a doctor's office, and I go in, and so she's mad at me. I can tell she's mad at me, and I was like, oh man, I must have forgot to pay her, or do the paperwork or something, whatever they get mad at you in doctor's offices for. And I was like, okay. I said, well, what's up here? What's the problem? And she goes, I listened to the game the other night. They scored 4 touchdowns in that game, and you didn't say who they after one single one of them. I'm like, I go, yeah, no, I can't do that. I'm not allowed to say, but they expect me to root for the Bengals. So when I got the Super Bowl the year that the Bengals were in it, I was like, oh, this is death here. There's no way. Either I'm going to be a complete homer in the eyes of the Rams fans, or I'm going to be a complete jerk in the eyes of the Bengals fans. So, I mean, remember the old TV show Dragnet, just the facts, ma'am. I was just the facts, ma'am, in that Super Bowl.
Trevor Lawrence poll question. Seton, give Chris the wording on that. See where Chris falls on it.
The wording is, Dan, Trevor Lawrence is ... a top 10 quarterback or somewhat disappointing?
I'm going to say a top 10 quarterback. I don't know that I would have said that originally, but I do think that Doug Peterson has had an impact on him. He's better than what he was. And, it's so funny that these guys that get drafted high, right? They get multiple opportunities. I mean, think if Trevor Lawrence were a 5th round pick that happened to get to play, right, in his first year. And that was all we saw. We saw 1 year, he was a 5th round pick, and that was it. We would have collectively, I think, gone, he doesn't have it, right? He doesn't have it. And they would have moved on, and he would have been one of those 2nd string guys that bounce from team to team until he's out of football. But when they're the first overall pick, you've seen it somewhere, and you just keep giving them the ball, or you change coaches, or you do, like, the belief is that he's going to get there. And I always wonder how many guys would have, if they would have been given the 3 or the 4 year window of opportunity, could have worked their way out of it and become something, but if you're even a 2nd round draft pick or a late 1st round draft pick, it seems like you get 7, 8, 9 games, and you're not making magic out there. They're turning the page. So I think that there's enough of an upward trajectory here to where I think you go, yeah, if I only got to take the top 10 guys and I got one of those 10 and he were one of the 10, would I take him? Yes, I would.
Good to talk to you, Chris. Thanks for joining us. Have fun on Sunday night.
Thank you, Dan. Good seeing you, buddy.
That's Cris Collinsworth, Football Night in America. He'll be there with Mike Tirico, 8:20 Eastern. It'll be the Eagles and the Dolphins.